What's going on, everyone? So, welcome to my latest live stream. This is, of course, everything I watched in February of 2026. I will be going through my letterbox from February 1st to, of course, February 28th, which was yesterday. I know that this is probably deja vu for some of you because last Sunday I actually did my everything I watched in January of 2026, and that was a catch up type video because I'm truthfully going to try to have it where at the beginning of every month I talk about everything I watched the previous month. So I'm hoping that this will, come into fruition. But I am excited to talk about everything I watched in February. I watched quite a bit, which is not shocking to anyone in the slightest. I tend to watch quite a bit on Letterboxd. That's why I love it so much. But one quick thing I wanted to say is Letterboxd had a top 250 list, and I think it was a couple days ago they expanded it to top 500. And my goal went from, okay, try to get at least like 200 out of 250 by the end of the year, to now I'm like, okay, just disregard that and just go at like a more leisure pace because 500 movies is quite a bit. And I think right now I'm at like 35-40%, something like that. So I'm hoping to, up those numbers. But it is a great guide because there are just a lot of international films on there that may or may not be on my radar. So it's good. I like having it as a guide. But anyways, let us get started with talking about all the films that I watched this month. I know that usually with my live streams, people start coming in around 20 minutes or so. So I apologize in advance that some of you will probably be having to do some catch up. But without further ado, let us get started. So sharing my screen right now. We have to start off the month. I watched Snatched, which I really liked Snatch. I've owned it on 4K for quite a bit, and I decided to do like a Guy Ritchie binge, and I liked Snatch. I liked it even more. I love the editing style, the frenetic nature of it, the characters, the humor, the twists and turns. It's definitely a film that Lock, Stock, and Smoking Barrel is a good debut film from Guy Ritchie, but this just goes to show that it's not just a one-off, that he was forced to be reckoned with. After that, I watched Sherlock Holmes, the 2009 film, which I know is kind of divisive. Some people don't like the style of that film. Some people feel that Guy Ritchie's style in particular isn't fitting for everything that's being depicted. But I honestly think that it was the right choice, especially with, how Sherlock Holmes has narration. And I think that narration style works so well with Guy Ritchie. So I think the fighting style also implements those as well. And I love Hans Zimmer's score. It's very unique, especially compared to a lot of his other albums that he's done. But love the costume design. It's just also a very entertaining film. Like, I think Lord Blackwood as a villain is very fascinating. I've been a fan of Mark Strong for a long time. Honestly, I would say around this time, 2009, 2010 is when I became a fan of him because he had Sherlock Holmes, and then right after that, he had Robin Hood, and I really liked his performance in both of those films. So I really like Sherlock Holmes. I gave it a 4.25 out of 5, and I also watched Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows, which is, of course, the sequel that came out a couple years later, and it's really good, man. I think it's a worthy sequel, and there's a line in the film that I do want to state because I think it's more timely than ever, especially with everything that happened yesterday in the world, which is kind of shocking because I saw this film a month ago. Professor Moriarty states, "You see, hidden within the unconscious, there is an insatiable desire for conflict. So you're not fighting me so much as you are the human condition. All I want to do is own the bullets and the bandages." And I can't help but think about that, especially with what happened yesterday. And again, it just goes to show that some people are like, oh, politics can't be in movies. But you know something? Politics and art, they go hand in hand. So this is a really good instance of the Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows dives into that and also dives into, how some people are just business people that want to make money and they do not care about people. At the end of the day, they just care about money. So that's something that's been going on for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And I think a blockbuster like Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows did a pretty good job discussing that. Also, just wanted to mention with Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows, I've heard some rumors that there might be a third one. I honestly don't know how I feel about that because the Sherlock Holmes films, from what I understand, they were shot on film, which is really cool. I highly doubt that the third entry would be shot on film, and I think it would be kind of distracting that it was shot digitally. It's also probably going to be a different director. It's not going to be Guy Ritchie. So I just don't know. I really am apprehensive to a third entry. And I know some people are surprised because it's like, oh, wait, you liked the other two entries. And it's like, yes, I did. But not everything needs a sequel, especially 10 plus years later. Actually, at this point, we're at 15 years. So, but I might be in the minority. We do have a comment. We have Joe, Volkswagen Joe 18. He says, good afternoon. Joe, good to hear from you, man. Hope you're doing well on this fine Sunday. Switching it up because I'm going solo. I can do this on a Sunday. So that was February 1st. Let's see. On February 1st, later on that day, I watched The Bellboy, which is a film starring Jerry Lewis. And what I really appreciate about that movie is that I grew up watching it, and I never really appreciated full-heartedly the opening segment, which basically goes into great detail about how the movie doesn't have any plot, how it's just a bunch of different sketches stitched together. And then the producer just like laughs about it and how he's going to make money off of it. And I don't know. I just think it's so funny. The movie might not necessarily be for everyone because the lead character does not talk. Everyone around him does talk. But I think that really emulates a lot of humor in certain situations. And I don't know. I really dug this movie. It's not perfect by any means. It's very flawed. But I enjoyed it. And I think that it's a good dipping of toes into Jerry Lewis's work if you haven't seen any of his other movies. But I like The Bellboy. I think it's on Prime for free right now, so would definitely recommend checking it out. I also watched The Cranes Are Flying, which is a movie that's on Letterboxd's top 250, which is now top 500. And I thought this movie was solid. I can definitely see why it's on the list. I can see its importance in film history. I didn't love it the way some people did, but I definitely respect it quite a bit. And I'm glad that I can finally say that I've watched it. Next up, we have The Conqueror, which, a little bit of background, I grew up watching a lot of John Wayne movies, like a lot. John Wayne started out doing B movies, and the B movies usually were not that good. Even at a young age, I'm like, there's something off about them. Now I look back and I'm like, okay, it's because the filmmaking just isn't that good. And then on top of that, John Wayne, you can definitely tell that he's someone that would become a star later on down the line. And that would happen with, of course, Stagecoach. That's where he got his big break, and that forever changed his career. But I grew up watching most of his films. And my point being is that The Conqueror was not one of those movies that I watched. But recently I was hearing quite a bit about this movie, how it's very racist and has possibly the worst casting ever. And honestly, I'm here to say that, yeah, this might be the worst casting ever. So for those of you who don't know, The Conqueror is about Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan is played by John Wayne. That's right. John Wayne plays Genghis Khan. Take that in for a second. One of the most famous Asian individuals in the world is played by John Wayne. Just let that sink in. And it doesn't help that everyone, and I mean everyone, is caked with so much makeup to try to make them look Asian. It's distracting. It is quite racist. And some people might say it's of the time. And I will say, okay, I can see what you're saying, but at the same time, some things haven't aged well. And this is definitely one of those instances where these aspects didn't. There are some commendable aspects. Like I do think that the cinematography is good, but a lot of the movie is just very dull. The story is not interesting in the slightest, which is mind-boggling when you realize with what it is that you're focusing on. But it's a bad movie. It's really bad. Like the 1 out of 5 isn't just because of possibly having the worst casting. It's also because it's a misfire on so many different levels. So I would not recommend watching this movie at all unless you really do want to see possibly the worst casting ever. So, and again, that's not hyperbole. That's coming from someone that's seen thousands and thousands of films. This was so bad. Next up, we have this was a breath of fresh air. I watched the Celebration, which is a Thomas Vinterberg film, and this is also on Letterboxd's top 250. And it's shot in a way that is so fascinating. It's basically what started the Dogma 95 movement, which for those of you that don't know, it's where there were certain guidelines where you couldn't really have like any added lighting. You used like camcorders instead of shooting on film. And it was just like a slice of life type approach. And this film, even though I did watch it on, Blu-ray from my local library, it's a film that if you're going into it expecting it to be like a bright, pretty, good-looking film, you're going to be disappointed. But if you are looking for a movie that showcasing that guerrilla style filmmaking in a very slice of life point of view type way, I think you'll like it. And what's also really cool is that when I was watching it, I think I got like halfway and I'm like, this had to have inspired the TV show Succession. It had to have. And I looked it up afterwards, and sure enough, this movie was a huge influence on the TV show Succession. So if you like Succession in regards to the character work, in regards to the camera work and everything, I think you'll appreciate this. But it's not exactly like Succession 100% because again, Succession, even though it is has that same type of camera work as the Celebration. It's shot on film. It's shot on 35 millimeter, and it does have like more of a nice, beautiful look to it. But the Celebration doesn't have that. But I would still say the Celebration is such an important film that I would highly recommend you check it out, especially if you are into films as an art form. Speaking of which, later on that night, I watched finally, and when I say finally, I mean that Fanny and Alexander is a film that's been on my watch list for 10 plus years. And it's one of those films that gets better and better with each passing minute. By the end, I was like, yeah, this is a great film, and I'm looking forward to rewatching it down the line. It's very meditative. It feels effortlessly organic, honestly. And I would say the second act really kind of shocked me at how, in some ways, it felt like a ghost story type movie. And there were some instances where I was kind of like creeped out, and I was not expecting that in a movie like this because going into it, I was like, okay, it's a drama. But yeah, there are some, I would say, horror aspects in that second act. But again, that's going to differ from person to person. Some people might say, oh, no, that's not horrifying. But for me, with what the sound mixing did, the camera work, and then the actual story beats that were going on in that second act, it really, psychologically did a number on me in a good way. So if you've been sleeping on Fanny and Alexander, I highly recommend you check it out. It's so worth your time. And that's another one that's on, Letterboxd's top 250. Next up, and I got to give a huge shout out to Nate Schwartz. He recommended that I see The Testament of Ann Lee in theaters. And full disclosure, it's not that I didn't have interest in this film. It's that I mentioned in my Letterboxd review that in the beginning of the year, I have a difficulty with going to the theater as much as I usually do. Like usually I'll play catch up in October to December where I'm watching so many movies, and then I'll take a break in January, February, and I'll watch a lot of classic movies, which is what you're seeing here, where a lot of these movies are ones that I've been aware about, but I just haven't seen, and then now I'm finally watching. Testament of Ann Lee was one of those instances where it's not. It came out last year, and I finally watched it, and I'm glad that I saw this in a theater because I thought that this was a really good film. It's a shame that it kind of got swept under the rug in regards to Oscar nominations, and that could be in part just because it wasn't on many people's radar. And on top of that, it's a movie that the rollout really wasn't done well, in my personal opinion, and I think that's why audiences just didn't really catch up to this movie. But I do hope that down the line this does get like a cult classic status, because I would say this is a really good companion piece with something like, say, The Brutalist, which ironically is written and directed by the same individual, Brady Corbet, and his wife, who she directed this film, but her and her husband both wrote Testament of Ann Lee. So if you like The Brutalist, there are some elements in that film that are in this, but this is a musical, but it's not a traditional music. It's focused on the Shakers. Amanda Seyfried did an amazing job, great costume design, production design. Love the 35 millimeter cinematography. It's a really good film. If this is one of those films that you come across on streaming, I would recommend you check this film out. When it gets a Blu-ray release, which I know it's not going to get a 4K release anytime soon because, unfortunately, it's a film that just didn't do well at the box office. But when it gets a Blu-ray release, I'll probably add this to my physical media collection because I really, really like The Testament of Ann Lee. Next up, and this is going to be shocking to some people, but I decided to rewatch Bibleman Breaking the Bonds of Disobedience. I grew up in a Christian household, so Bibleman was one of the first things that I could honestly say that I loved in regards to like films and TV shows. And I was curious to see, almost 20 years later, how I feel about the Bible Man movies. And I'll just say this was one that was one of my favorites growing up, and watching it now, yeah, it's not good. It's not good at all. It's actually, I would say, really, really bad. It does have a couple interesting moments, but for the most part, it was kind of hard to get through. But maybe I'll watch the other entries. Maybe there's some that I'll appreciate more than I'm an adult. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend going out of your way to see Bible Man. And then next up, I watched The Last Stand, which is a movie that, full disclosure, I wasn't 100% sure if I had seen this movie before, because as I mentioned just now, I grew up in a religious household, but I also grew up in a household where I couldn't watch R-rated movies. So there were a lot of times where I would go to the library and I would watch movies on the computer right then and there. And I remember when this movie came out in January of 2013, and I remember one of my friends at the time said that when the movie comes out on DVD or Blu-ray, that he'll let me borrow his DVD. And I can't remember if later on in that semester, maybe in April or May, if he had let me borrow the DVD. I don't remember. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put this down as a first time watch. And after watching the movie, honest to God, I think one of the reasons why I don't remember if I saw this movie or not is because it's so forgettable. Like, I am honestly terrified when I rank this director's work, because even as I'm sitting here now talking about it, I'm like, there really isn't much to say. It's a very by the numbers movie. And it's shocking because the director is one that he's really good at directing, but I don't know if it's because he's now working in the studio system in Hollywood, but it was a very forgettable experience. The director, by the way, in case some of you need to know, it is let me go back 1 second. It is directed by Kim Ji-woon, who you'll see again me talk about him. And the reason why I'm saying this now is because I've been wanting to rank his movies for quite a while now. I started several years back, and I'm like, okay, this is the year that I'm going to get pretty close to watching all of his work. So I decided to start with The Last Stand. And yeah, I wouldn't recommend you watch this movie unless you're trying to go through his work. Later on that day, I watched Train Dreams with my wife. If you're new to the channel, my wife and I, we try to watch all the Academy Award Best Picture nominees. I had seen Train Dreams before, but she hadn't, so we watched it together. And she thought, I think, if I recall correctly, she thought it was solid. I really liked it. I think it's quite a good film that is definitely worthy of being nominated for Best Picture. It's a very somber film with a lot to chew on, especially long after the credits roll. Love the cinematography, really like the acting. It's a very meditative film. It harkens back to something like Terrence Malick, and it also has definitely influences of, I would say personally, the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. I think that's a big influence on this movie as well. So if you like Terrence Malick, if you like that movie I just mentioned, I think that you'll like Train Dreams. It's really good. Next up, we have the SpongeBob movie, Sponge Out of Water. This movie, I mean, literally, it's in the picture. You see that picture? That is the way to watch this movie, and I think I even mentioned it. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just gonna put this here. Like, this is a movie, and I've talked to some of my friends about this before. How sometimes a movie might not necessarily be good, but you can have a good time with it. And that's something I will say is right on par with this movie. Is this movie good? No, I thought it was okay. As an experience, I had a blast watching this movie, and I would watch it again in a heartbeat. I had so much fun with it. I decided to go through the SpongeBob movies because SpongeBob is someone that I wasn't allowed to watch growing up, so I decided to now finally watch the movies. And I can say wholeheartedly, I understand why some people might not like 2 to 4 in regards to the SpongeBob movies, because the second one is what kind of started it, where it wasn't 2D animation like hand drawn. It was more so implementing 3D animation, live action, and then also 2D. And then after this entry, we'll talk about the third and fourth, but the third and fourth are 100% CGI with, of course, some human elements. And I understand that, if you grew up watching SpongeBob and you're used to the hand-drawn animation, that's something that will be very hard to get used to. And I definitely understand that. It's the equivalent of, I would say, what I mentioned earlier about Sherlock Holmes, how you have Sherlock Holmes 1 and 2 that were shot on film. And then you have the third Sherlock Holmes, which will probably be shot digitally, and it's going to be something that's going to be hard to get used to. So I understand where people are coming from regarding this, but I had a blast watching this movie. I really did. That's why I have the review itself up. Let's see. Oh, Andrew's in the chat. Oh, hey, Chad. We're back again with the monthly updates after just 1 week. LOL. Yes. I decided that I was going to actually do the live stream because I had time today, and I was like, it will then be a month later. I would say, I'm trying to think. Let me see. April. It'll probably be April 5th when I talk about everything I watched in March, which of course starts today. Andrew also says Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes wasn't very entertaining to me, sadly. Oh, that's a shame. I know it's not for everyone necessarily. Train Dreams was really good. I'm glad that you liked it. I do remember us talking about that. But yeah, I enjoyed the SpongeBob movie. And then right after Sponge Out of Water, I watched Sponge on the Run, which, literally look at this picture. This gives you an idea on what type of movie you're expecting. And I honest to God mean this. Do not watch this movie unless you are high. And that's kind of something I've been trying to preface in some of my reviews. Like, if you are watching this movie sober, I would not recommend it at all. At all. This movie is insane. And that's why I had this joke where it's like, oh, I'm gonna, and I've seen some people talk about this entry, and they're like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But to be honest with you, it has that dreamlike quality that the second one kind of started, especially in that third act. But it's wild, man. It's a wild movie. And that's why I really don't care what anyone thinks. I enjoyed this movie quite a bit. And yeah, that's why I marked it down, and I had a lot of fun. Similar to the second one, I would own this 100% on Blu-ray. Next up, I watched Saltburn. I rewatched it, I should say. And Saltburn was one of those movies where I defended when it first came out in 2023. And I decided to rewatch it in preparation for Wuthering Heights. And Saltburn is very interesting in that going into the rewatch, I thought that watching an elevated state would make me love it. But I honestly felt the same that I did the first time. I thought that it was okay. I really liked how it was shot on film. Love the costume design, the production design. I love how wild the ending is. There's definitely some memorable moments for sure. As a whole, I just think it's okay. I can see why some people really like it. I can also see why some people hate it, but I think it's just an okay movie. Next up, we have The Moment, which is the Charlie XCX movie. And yeah, I felt mixed about this. I'll say this. I wasn't entertained by this movie. Like, I was checked out pretty early on by this movie. I think the directing, the writing, the dialogue, they're all not that engaging. And I'll say this, even the cinematography, I respected some of the choices that they used, but as a whole, it didn't really grab me. But I do think it's very well acted. I do think the costume design is good, as well as the makeup. But I felt mixed about this movie. I really would only recommend this if you are someone that tries to watch all the A24's produced movies or are a fan of Charlie XCX. But besides that, I really wouldn't recommend it. Next up, I rewatched The Fistful of Dollars, which is, of course, the start of the Man with No Name trilogy. And yeah, I mean, every time I watch this, it's the same. I think it's a solid movie. It's the weakest in the trilogy, but it's still a solid Western with a really good score and just very well done cinematography and a lead performance that honestly made Clint Eastwood a household name. So yeah, started that. Then I watched The Quiet Family, which I mentioned earlier. Kim Ji-woon, he is someone that you'll see quite a bit in regards to this live stream. I watched The Quiet Family, and I would say this, go into it knowing as little as possible. I will say I enjoyed it as a whole. I don't think it completely came together, but I'm glad that I watched it. I do think it's a pretty good directorial debut and one that I can see why it has a cult following. After that, I watched I Am Cuba, which, holy cow, I Am Cuba is so good. This is one that right when it ended, I said to myself, yeah, I'm going to need to rewatch this. It's one of those films that I feel like will get better and better with each viewing. I can see why it's on Letterboxd's top 250, now 500. If you've been sleeping on this film, please watch it. The cinematography is insane. There's one scene in particular by a pool that very clearly helped influence Boogie Nights. And if you love Boogie Nights as much as me, I think you'll be able to pinpoint that. Also, it's a film that's very important to watch in terms of social and political climate of that time period, but also how, especially with what happened yesterday, how some things don't change, unfortunately. So please watch I Am Cuba. Also, before I get to the next one, I just realized that we have a bunch of comments, so I apologize about that. Andrew says, "Why weren't you allowed to watch SpongeBob?" That's an excellent question. So I'll say this right away: the reason why I wasn't is because I grew up in a very religious household. Two, because of that, there was also the whole thing of I don't know why. Don't explain. I don't really have an explanation of this, but my parents thought that SpongeBob would cause ADHD because of the fast editing style. Not even kidding. So I wasn't allowed to watch it. Now, I will say on one front, I don't think that that's a correlation. Fast editing equals ADHD. But I will say I am glad that I grew up watching like cinema from the 1920s to 60s because when I watch films from that era now, it's not like a chore the way it might be for some, younger audiences or even maybe people my own age. So I'm glad that I watched and was susceptible to a lot of early cinema. But yeah, it's I know it's what's going on. Can't Articulate says, "What is up, Can't Articulate? Glad to hear from you, man. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your Sunday. What a day, right? What a day so far." Tears in the Rain 11 says, "Waiting for your next video." Oh, thanks, man. I can tell you right now that let's see when my next video is going to be. I'll let you know right now on live. 1 second. Okay, so it looks like my next video will be March 4th. It will be 1989 Academy Award Best Picture nominees, and I will be doing that with Gal of Film Toppings, who we've collaborated before. So I'm excited for that one because I know that 1989 is a pretty big year for the Academy Awards. So there's definitely going to be some interesting opinions. I'm sure there'll be someone that says Driving Miss Daisy was a well-deserved Best Picture winner. I won't agree with that, though. Tears in the Rain 11 also says, "I agree with your ratings of Saltburn. Can't be style over substance movie." I don't believe in the term style over substance. Andrew and I have actually talked about that, but I will say that it's definitely just like an okay movie. I really did want to be able to sit back and say like, oh yeah, I liked it much more, but it was honestly the same. I thought that second act really screeched to a halt in a way where I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? Andrew says, "I don't care what people say. I really like Saltburn." I'm glad that he did, man. I enjoyed it. That's why I have like the heart to it, but I don't love it per se. Tears in Rain 11, The Quiet Family was remade into many languages. Oh, I did not know that it's gotten remade several times. Tears in Rain 11, I Am Cuba influenced Soderbergh's Traffic. You know something? I can see that, especially with like the camera movement and the camera angles. And Traffic's one of my favorite films. I love that film. So now I want to rewatch Traffic. Andrew says, "Saw Saltburn twice in theaters. Funny because first time I bumped into some coworkers I didn't like, so it was an awkward watch. Still likes the movie, so I went back the second time with my actual friends." That's awesome. I still remember when I saw it in theaters. I remember Sergey was like, "Yeah, they don't actually have those type of parties," and I'm like, actually, they do. I know some people that have been to those type of parties, and it was just kind of ironic because then a couple years later, with all that's come out about Epstein Island and everything, and Eyes Wide Shut, of course, was a prelude to all that. It's like, yeah, but this is something that it's nothing new. I mean, you hear about all the parties that happened in the 1920s and everything, so the Roaring Twenties. So it's like, no, this type of stuff has been going on for a long, long time. Even if you pull open something like the Bible, these type of parties have been around for a long, long, long time. So just thought that was a funny answer. I'm from India, so The Quiet Family was remade into my mother tongue. I think I've heard of that movie. I haven't seen it yet, though, but that's very interesting. I didn't know that. Andrew, that second time, though, I told the cinema staff, so they gave me side eyes like I'm kinky or something. That, yeah, Don't worry. It will not be the last time you hear of Emerald Fennell in regards to what I watched in February, because after I watched I'm Cuba, the next day I rewatched Promising Young Woman. And I like Promising Young Woman. I think it's a good film, but watching it at home and just really thinking about the ending, I really do think the movie should have ended 10 minutes before the ending we got. I think that if they had cut the last like 5-10 minutes, we would have gotten what the themes and messages were really tackling, and I think it would have been very hard hitting. I understand why they didn't, because at the end of the day, it is a studio movie, and they do want it to be where audiences have a sense of, pleasure, so to speak, where it's like, yes, we got what we wanted. But the reality is, up until that point, it was focusing on how what we want to happen doesn't always happen, and sometimes bad things happen, and there aren't actual consequences, and that's what the movie was focusing on up until the last 10 minutes. So I liked the movie. I like it quite a bit, but don't love it the way I used to. Next up, I watched Cobweb, same director who did, of course, The Last Stand and Quiet Family, and I liked this one. I liked it. Didn't love it. It's very interesting because it's all about a director that's trying to essentially redo the ending of his movie and all the charades that go on with it. It's fascinating. I don't think it's perfect, but I enjoyed it. Next up, I watched Joe's College Road Trip, and for a couple days, I was one of the top reviews on that movie because pretty much nobody was watching it up until recently. And I've told my friend Marv this, but I will always give Tyler Perry a chance, even though every single time I do, it's kind of a failure. This was a huge failure, in my opinion, because it's trying to be a movie that's like, oh yeah, we got to bring the older generation, the younger generation together, and get them on the same level. But with how it's handled, it is so sloppy, it's so haphazard, and the filmmaking is really not that good. And the ending is insane, but not in like a surreal or trippy way. It's just in a way where it's like, you didn't know how to end this, did you? I really didn't like this movie. It's easily one of the worst I've seen so far. Will it stay that way? I don't know. Will Tyler Perry direct another movie this year? If so, I'm sure that movie might be a little bit worse. We'll see. Next up, so I saw Joe's College Road Trip at the beginning of the morning, and then later on that night, I saw a couple movies. I saw Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die in theaters. It's the latest Gore Verbinski film, and I really liked it. I think it's going to be one of those instances of a movie that once it hits streaming, it will gain a following. I think it's a very entertaining film. It's very unpredictable. The characters are a lot of fun, and it's a film that gets better and better with each passing minute. First 10 minutes, I wasn't quite sure how I was going to feel about it, but with all of the twists and turns, I quickly grew to appreciate the movie, and I was on this movie's wavelength, especially with how anti-AI it is. You guys know how I am in terms of my feelings of AI. This movie is definitely like, yep, not a fan of AI, not a fan of what it's going to do. And I think that with how it was able to combine many different genres, it was a very fascinating watch. So most people did not see this in theaters. So I'm just going to say this right now. When it hits streaming, when it hits physical media, check it out. You might enjoy it. It's not going to be for necessarily everyone, but it is a movie, in my opinion, worth watching. So I watched that with my little brother. Next up that night, I watched Crime 101 with Marv. And, Discount Heat was enjoyable. I thought it was very interesting to see a movie that was shot on location in California. I enjoyed the cast. When there is action, I enjoyed that. It's a movie, though, that unfortunately doesn't fully come together. I think some of the themes that it's tackling are fascinating, but it's not, in my opinion, as a whole cohesive. But it is a movie that I enjoyed it in the moment. Marv did not enjoy it. He really did not like it, actually, but I enjoyed it. Next up, the next day, I watched Wuthering Heights with my wife on Valentine's Day. And my wife read the book, Wuthering Heights. I did not. I have seen the 1939 classic. I enjoyed Wuthering Heights. I thought that it was a rock-solid movie. I love the VistaVision cinematography. I especially appreciated just the soundtrack. I mean, this is another instance of, if you like Baz Luhrmann movies, I think that you might appreciate this movie. Margot Robbie, Jake Borody, I thought they had pretty good chemistry. It's a very toxic relationship, but I do think it's very fascinating. And I also think that the interwoven nature of sex, nudity, and violence, I thought was very fascinating, especially the opening scene. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about with that opening scene, because I thought it was going to be one thing, and then once they go from black to then the first image, it's like, oh, okay, that's not what I was thinking, but okay, I see what you're doing. I'm on your wavelength, so I enjoyed it. After that, I watched. Okay, a little bit of context. So some of you are going to be like, wait, you watched the first SpongeBob SquarePants movie after watching 2 to 4? So, full disclosure, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, I originally, when I watched the second and third, was watching the first one. But what happened was 38 minutes into it, the DVD I got from the library conked out. It wasn't working. I kept trying and trying. And then finally, in my state of mind, I'm like, you know what? It's not working. So I'm just going to buy it on Amazon. So I bought the physical media on Amazon, and I was like, when it comes in, I'll watch it. So it came in, and I watched it after the second and third. And you know what? I liked this one. This is one of those instances where I acknowledge it's better than 2 to 4, and I think that it is a good film. But I enjoyed 2 to 4 more from an entertainment standpoint, which I know is going to be like wild for some people to hear. But I do like this one. I'm glad that I own it on physical media. I do think it's funny. And I loved the humor of this one in particular. So I mean, this one. Let's see the shot that I have. Yeah, I mean, this gives you a pretty good idea on what it is. I thought it was funny, like really really funny. I have quickly come to realize that I appreciate Patrick quite a bit. So yeah, I guess you could say I've become a SpongeBob SquarePants fan. After that, I watched Punch Drunk Love, which is one of my favorite PTA films. Which, I mean, let's just get this out of the way. Half of his films, I think, are masterpieces, and I think this is one of them. Punch Drunk Love is fantastic. It's a film that manages to blend art house sensibilities with Adam Sandler's presence. It's got an off kilter score that really gets you in the mindset of the lead character. It's a great film, and it's a perfect film to watch on Valentine's Day. So yeah, I still just own the Blu-ray. Maybe I'll upgrade to the 4K at some point, but we'll see. Also, we have a bunch of comments. Let me get to that. I apologize. Let's see. Tears in the Rain 11. Yeah, the ending bummed me out too. Promising Young Woman was a promising debut, but I think Fennell is going to style over substance with her subsequent movies. I mean, I will say this. I do appreciate 100% with how she is a voice to be reckoned with. I actually did rank her movies, and that video will be coming out sometime next year. I do appreciate her work. I don't think that they 100% work necessarily for myself, but it is very nice to have a female director that has a voice and that causes a lot of discussion. Like all three of her movies causes discourse not only in the film community, but people outside of it. And I think that is awesome. Bootzilla is calling me out. Stop watching those trash Tyler Perry movies and go watch Menace to Society now. Oh, hi, Chad. I love that. You know something? You're not wrong. Like, I do need to watch Menace to Society instead of, watching these Tyler Perry movies. But you know what? As I tell Marv, sometimes you just got to watch movies and that aren't good, so that way you can then appreciate the movies that are good. And that was definitely the case with this movie. Tears in the Rain 11, Menace to Society is the best hood movie, period. Tears says, Brazilla says Tears 100%. Andrew says, yeah, Crime 101 and The Rip are two recent movies I thought looked too generic, so I skipped them. Yeah, I would say that's a good way of looking at it. Although I will say this, Crime 101 is one that I don't know if it's still in theaters, but if it is, I would still say go support it, because that's a movie that I didn't realize it was like $90 million budget movie, but that's a movie that's geared towards, the dads, if you will. And we don't really get those type of movies anymore in theaters. So the fact that we did, I think is awesome, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to check it out, especially. But The Rip was just so forgettable. Like Crime 101, several weeks later, I still remember certain elements, but The Rip, I completely forgot, honestly. It's very forgettable. The Tears in Rain 11, the concluding moments of Menace are some of the best ever lines ever said. Oh wow, that has me excited, even more excited. Rip is a good old flick we used to get in the '90s. Not great, but he does the job. Tears of Rain 11. I too watched the first SpongeBob movie this year, and I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah, me too. Like I'm so glad I watched it. It's very entertaining, and like the first 38 minutes when I tried watching it the first time, and then before the DVD conked out, I was like, yeah, I can definitely see myself really liking this movie as a whole. And I thought the third act was just so wild, and that's what I like about the SpongeBob movies is that the way that they build in regards to just how crazy they get is something that's very admirable, especially with how I watch these type of movies. So yeah, there's that. Andrew says, check your DM for my time with Wuthering Heights, lol. But in short, Linus Sandgren won the film Savior. I will. I'll check it out later. And yeah, I think the cinematography was so good. The VistaVision looks so good. Punch Drunk Love is my least favorite PTA and still a very intriguing movie. Oh wow, I'm surprised it's your least favorite. I think it's my number 5. I love it, man. I love it so much. Punch Drunk Love, lol. I'd still love to see Punch Dunk Love though. Also, so we're halfway done. The 15th, I watched La La Land with my little brother, and La La Land is way more surreal than I remembered. I've always loved La La Land. I thought that it was a great film. Damien Chazelle's directing is top tier in this movie. The acting, the themes, it's such a thematically rich film. Um, Again, it's a musical for those that don't like musicals, but I like musicals, and I thought the musical numbers were so good. That long take in the beginning, so good. It's also an incredible film to watch in the heightened state. Speaking of which, I watched For a Few Dollars More in that state, and I'll say this: I love For a Few Dollars More, but I don't necessarily recommend watching that movie in that state of mind. Not that it was like a bad experience, but it didn't really do anything for me. But as a whole, it's a great film. It's very influential, I should say, and I think that it influenced so many different films. Pirates of the Caribbean 2 and 3 are ones that come to mind, especially with Davy Jones's character. Fantastic Mr. Fox, a lot of the cues in that movie from certain soundtracks are very much so prevalent in For a Few Dollars More. So I do think that this film influenced that movie as well, and then others as well. After that, I watched Melancholia, which is a Lars von Trier film, and probably the only one I would watch in the heightened state. And I'll say this: what a film! I'm glad that I rewatched it. This is one that I'll talk. I'll get even more personal than I usually do. Melancholia, I watched one time back in 2016, and it was before I was aware that I basically have dealt with depression and anxiety most of my life. So I didn't have that self awareness. So when I was watching the movie, I was taking things quite literally instead of looking at it symbolically. All these years later, now that I'm self aware about having a day to day battle with depression and anxiety, it hit a lot differently. Like I was able to see the symbolism. I was able to really relate to the lead character with how she feels in some instances. And I do think that Lars von Trier, him himself having clinical depression and right after being institutionalized and then making this movie, makes it feel all the more personal. And I do think that in terms of Lars von Trier's work, this is his most accessible. A lot of his movies, I would make the case that they are just very hard to watch for the sake of being hard to watch instead of actually, having a lot of thematic richness. But this is one where I do think that anyone can really watch this movie and should, because it is a movie that's tackling themes that most people can relate to. So not a film for everyone, but one that everyone should watch at least once. Next up to end the night, I watched The Great Gatsby, which I guess I'll tell a little bit of story with The Great Gatsby. Great Gatsby is one of those movies that in May of 2013, I went on a class trip to see this in theaters, and I did not like it. Like, I did not like it at all. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5, which for some of you guys that have been following me on Letterboxd, you'll probably think in your mind, wait, 2.5 out of 5 is not a bad rating from you. And you'd be right with how I am now. But back in 2013, a 2.5 out of 5 was a very low rating. Most movies I gave 4 to 5 out of 5. So me giving this movie a 2.5 out of 5 was like, what the heck? What's going on with this movie? I didn't like the soundtrack. I thought the soundtrack was very distracting. Honestly, if I wasn't on a class trip, I wanted to walk out like 45 minutes in. But by the end, there were some elements that I liked. And I decided to rewatch this movie in 2021 in preparation for doing my Baz Luhrmann director ranking video, which, if you haven't watched, I would recommend you watch. I felt as if I appreciated the movie much more, but I gave it the same rating, which is kind of ironic. But how I am now, I've also changed since 2021, where I'm not on a movie's case where it's like, oh, the soundtrack doesn't, it's anachronistic. It's like that doesn't really bother me anymore because it's very clear that Baz Luhrmann isn't interested in historical accuracy. He's interested in the feelings that this music will emulate, and on top of that, also the nature of music. How music is something that's supposed to be able to be brought across decades, if not hundreds of years. I mean, that's one of the reasons why it's so cool to hear classical music that's still to this day used. And I think it just really clicked on this viewing that that's what Baz Luhrmann's doing. It's one of the reasons why Moulin Rouge hits a lot better for me now. So I liked Great Gatsby. In a long-winded way, I'm trying to say I liked Great Gatsby a bit more. I still don't think it's a perfect movie, but I do enjoy it much more. I gave it, I think it was a 3.25. Yeah, 3.25 out of 5. I enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed it. Next up, I did not watch anything the next day, but I did watch on the 17th Dances with Wolves, and that was, of course, for the live stream because Marv, Sergey, and myself, we do a top 100 collective, and we're in alphabetical order. So next up was Dances with Wolves, and watching the extended cut was interesting because there are certain scenes where I'm glad that they were added back, but then there are other scenes where I'm like, excuse me, this could have been cut. So I liked it much more, especially since I watched it on Blu-ray, so the quality was like really, really good. The last few times I watched it, it wasn't in the best quality. So I definitely appreciated the filmmaking much more, but it's still a film that I liked. I really liked. In fact, I would say of the 3 viewings, I liked it the best this viewing. But I do think the theatrical version is the one to go with if you haven't seen this film yet. I do think it's an important film. I did put a poll out for if people thought that this should have won Best Picture, and a lot of people said Goodfellas. So, I guess audiences have had their piece, and I understand. But I like Dances with Wolves quite a bit. Also, before I get into the next movie, we have a bunch of comments. So we have, let me go. Tears in the Rain 11 says, have you seen The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, which is the inspiration for La La Land? No, it's funny you should ask because I haven't, but it's been on my radar for, I want to say 6 years. I might finally watch it pretty soon. And the reason why I say that is because I will be talking about that director in a little bit because I did watch his film for the first time, like one of his films. So I'll definitely be watching it relatively soon. Tears of Rain also says, yeah, Melancholy is one of his best. It's more structured well and easier entry. Agreed. And I do think the digital cinematography was actually pretty good. Tears of Rain 11, which version of Great Gatsby you watched? Leo or Redford version? This is the Leo one. My apologies. It's I need to watch the Redford version. That's one of those instances where normally in my high school we would watch the Robert Redford one, but because in 11th grade I was a part of it was 2013, my teacher decided to forego watching the original and just have a class trip to see the remake in theater. So I still haven't seen the original, which is a shame because I do love Robert Redford. Andrew says La La Land is good and my Best Picture winner. To this day, I still believe it was a conspiracy to take away its victory at the last minute. Oh, stop. I love Moonlight. Moonlight, I think, is the one that deserved to win, and that's why I'm glad that it did. But I do love La La Land. I do think La La Land is a really, really good film. But Moonlight, I mean, that's in my top 25 of all time. And I am probably going to rewatch it pretty soon. Next up, after Dance with Wolves, I watched a film called Gondahar. This is a French film, but unfortunately in America, guess what? We don't have the French version. We have the redubbed version. It's in English, and also they changed the soundtrack. both are things that I do critique the movie for, but it's more so what's surrounding the movie. Like the fact that I think it was the Weinstein brothers, they are the ones that did that. They didn't want it to be in its original language and original soundtrack. So I'm hoping that at some point in time we do get this movie with how it was originally shown overseas. Fingers crossed, maybe Criterion will get a hold of it or a boutique label, but it's a good film. If you like world building, if you like animated films that are like hand drawn, this is the film to watch. It's so good. It's also the same director who did Fantastic Planet. So if you like Fantastic Planet, I would recommend watching the director's other two films, which is Gone to Hair, and then I will be talking about his third film in a little bit. But in case you didn't know, I am planning to, well, at the time I was planning to rank this director's work. I did end up filming the director ranking video last week and also edited it, and it's set up for 2027. I think it's coming out. I want to say it's coming out May of 2027, so stay tuned for that. But I liked it. That's why I gave it 4 out of 5. And then I watched Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie the next day. Glad I saw this in theaters. I thought it was a good film overall. There were some things that kind of held it back, such as the fact that it takes place in 2008, but it's showing The Hangover, which came out in 2009. And it's also showing certain movie posters that came out months before. And with the way marketing is, they're going to show posters that are about to come out. So it should have been movies that were coming out either towards Christmas time of 2008 or early 2009. But I still liked this movie. One of my friends did tell me that he was at the film festival where the director and the actor both discussed this, and apparently it was one of those things where it was intentional. So now that I know that, I do think that I need to rewatch it to appreciate it, because those were elements that did take me out of the movie, unfortunately. But now that I understand that those were intentional, I think I'll be able to appreciate it. Similar to how, like, Great Gatsby, the 2013 rendition, now that I know that those choices were intentional and I understand the symbolism behind it, I was able to appreciate it. So I'm hoping that's going to be the case rewatching Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie. So support this. It's indie cinema. Later on that day, I watched The Nutty Professor, which is Jerry Lewis, stars him. And I wasn't 100% sure if I had seen this movie before because I had always heard about it throughout my childhood, but I wasn't sure if I had seen it. And after watching it, the ending made me realize that I think I had seen certain scenes of it, but I hadn't seen the movie as a whole. And, I felt mixed about it. There were certain things that I did like. I honestly do think that when it's focused on him as a professor, it's hilarious. When it's focused on his alter ego, it's really not as funny. In fact, it's very much so less interesting than the other elements. But it's well shot for sure. But yeah. Next up, I watched Time Masters, which is directed by René Laloux, and similar to Gone to Hair, it has the fact that it's an English dub, the fact that it's not its original language regarding the soundtrack. It's a shame, but similar to Gone to Hair, I'm hoping we get a boutique label or possibly Criterion that actually gives us the original French language rendition. So again, I like this film. I liked it quite a bit, but I think I would like it even more if we actually got the French version. So that's that. But yeah, I then ranked the director's work. So then what happened was I saw that earlier in the day, and then in the middle of the day, I went to Bryn Mawr Film Institute, which is really, really awesome. Like I hadn't been there until last year, and I went there a couple times last year, and it was great. Like every time was quite the experience. And I went there this time to watch Eraserhead in 35 millimeter. But before I saw it in 35 millimeter, they showed ahead of it The Alphabet, which is David Lynch's first short film. I had never seen it before, and I gotta say, watching it on the big screen was the way to go. It's a very creepy short film. Like it definitely sticks with you. A week later, I'm still thinking about it. So I loved it. I noticed right at the beginning that it wasn't being shown on 16 millimeter because it showed the Criterion label, which means that this is actually on the Eraserhead Blu-ray. So I will watch this short film down the line again because I really liked it. So after they showed The Alphabet, the short film, I then watched, of course, Eraserhead, and What can I say? Eraserhead is one of my favorite films of all time. I think it's a masterpiece. Um, it's a great introduction to surrealism as a whole, where the film makes sense, but it also arguably doesn't. But then there is that argument to be made that maybe going into fatherhood doesn't make sense because there's a lot of new things that are expected of you or are not expected of you. So it has this like dreamlike quality to it. I think the fact that they shot it all black and white was a great choice. It really gives it a lived-in feel. It's only 90 minutes long, but they're able to fit in so much world building that I loved it. There's also some dark humor that I think works really well, and I think that the score, the cinematography are very heightened, so it gives it like a very creepy feel to it. So, Eraserhead is the best Father's Day film as of the filming of this recording, I think personally, and I will probably rewatch it in June for Father's Day. And I think that you should watch it on Father's Day as well. Before I get into what I watched next, I watched The Alphabet and Eraserhead solo in theaters, but later on that night, a couple friends came over and we did a movie night. I'll get into that in just a second. For now, we do have a couple comments. Let me get to that. Andrew says, I'm not so into Baz Luhrmann's style, like I said last week, but Great Gatsby was pretty all right to me. Watched it a lot through the years. Yeah, Baz Luhrmann's not for everyone, but I do love Moulin Rouge. I gotta say, I think that movie has a soft spot for me. It's even better in a heightened state. I'll just say that. Tears of Rain 11. Thanks for recommending Gone to Hair. I'm going to watch it. Yes, I would definitely recommend you watch it. Just go into it knowing that it's an English dub, so it's kind of distracting, especially if you've seen Fantastic Planet. Like going from Fantastic Planet to the Gone to Hair, it's like, man, I really wish that this was subtitled and in French. Like it would add even more to it. But Gone to Hair is still a good movie. Great world building. Andrew says, since my favorite of all time is Last Samurai, many people have told me to check out Dance with Wolves and Braveheart, which they reckon I'd like these two. Yeah, so Andrew, it's funny you mention that because Last Samurai is a film that I'm looking to rewatch because Marv has not seen The Last Samurai, which I'm still shocked by because I think he would like it. But so I'm planning to rewatch that pretty soon. And yeah, Dancing with Wolves definitely inspired The Last Samurai 100%. So I do think that if you like The Last Samurai, which of course you do, I think you'll like Dancing with Wolves. Braveheart, it's very beloved here in America, but I do think it's very flawed. I think the directing, especially, is very bumpy in that first half, but I think you would like it. But I do think Dance with Wolves is better. Tears of Rain 11. Yeah, Eraserhead is the GOAT. Agreed. It's awesome. Tears of Rain 11. Yeah, I'll show my father Eraserhead, showing my love to him. Honestly, that'd be such a bonding experience. All right, so now getting into the movie night. I watched True Stories with two of my friends, and True Stories. How do I put this? I think I'll just show my review, and that's like the best way to describe it. So you can read it while I'm saying it, but basically, it's a movie that I would recommend watching in a heightened state of mind, or at least go into it knowing that it's a very surreal film that clearly helped inspire Wes Anderson. Like there are so many sequences where I'm like, this feels like it's out of a Wes Anderson film, and then I have to mentally say to myself, well, this came out before Wes Anderson's work. But there's a dreamlike quality of this film that's almost indescribable. I really do think that it's a film that everyone should watch, but just go in knowing that it's very satirical. It's very much so a film that's quote unquote out there, but like my goodness, it's such a good film. I really liked it. It's just so many scenes had me laughing out loud. I'm like, what's going on? Like, but in the moment, I had a blast with it. My friend Ryan, he brought over his Blu-ray. We watched it. After that, we watched. So we did a pairing. What I try to do with Chad's multiplex movie nights is I try to pair 1 to 3 movies together that I think would go well together. And in this case, I decided to have us watch Freddy Got Fingered. And my rating went up. Yes, I bought the DVD. And it's kind of ironic because I think at some point this will get a Blu-ray or 4K release, but I wanted to show it to friends without any advertisements, because when I watched it the first time on Plex, it was one of those instances where every 5 to 10 minutes there were commercials, and it really broke the flow of the movie. So I'm like, okay, if I'm going to spend $8 on the DVD, I'm okay with that if there's not going to be commercials. Again, that's why I love physical media. But we had a blast. Like, the three of us were laughing so much. Definitely a film I would recommend to watch with friends, because if you know nothing about this movie, which I'm just going to be frank, all I knew is that the title, and then also the fact that it's a movie that so many people look at as so bad it's good. I knew nothing about it, and I was just constantly shocked and surprised with what was happening, and I was laughing to near death the first time, and I laughed somehow, some way, even more on second viewing. This is a movie that clearly influenced individuals such as Nathan Fielder, Tim Robinson, and it's such a heightened film that I really appreciated. I was on this film's wavelength. It's insane. It's a film like anything you've seen. I promise you that you will be changed watching this movie. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I'm not sure. But just know that it's a cult classic for a reason. It also won the Razzie for not best, for worst picture. And I gotta say, it's hilarious because when my friends left, I then watched A Beautiful Mind because the 4K came in. And not American Beauty, A Beautiful Mind won Best Picture in 2001. So in the same night, I watched the Worst Picture and the Best Picture 2001. And my rating is higher for Freddy Got Fingered, but from a filmmaking standpoint, which of course is what I care about most, from a filmmaking standpoint, A Beautiful Mind is the better film. And I do think that it has better acting, but again, it's apples and oranges because one is a drama, one is a heightened surreal comedy. But I do like A Beautiful Mind. I do stand by that it is a good film. Did it deserve Best Picture? I personally don't think so, but I do think it's a good film, and I do think that there are some arguments to be made with how it handles the twists of the film and with what happened after that. If you don't know anything about the movie, I'm trying to be vague here, so not to spoil the twist, but it dives into certain themes and certain messages that are kind of delicate. And I think that with some people, with how it's handled, some people just weren't a fan of it, and I can see why. But I do think it's a good film, and I do think it's a film that's very different from most biopics. Speaking of biofilms, I watched All the President's Men. This was a film that came out on physical media, specifically speaking 4K, the same day as A Beautiful Mind. So I decided to rewatch that film, and it's one of my favorite films of all time. This is one of those films that everyone needs to watch because it does a great job of really diving into the newspaper industry and journalism in particular, with all that goes into it. Not only that, it's a film that's wild watching now because Watergate was a serious incident, like really, really serious. And the fact that we had a president at this time that when this story broke and everything, and when it really got to a point, he stepped aside, he was impeached. It's wild to think that happened 50 years ago because now we have a president that's done, in my opinion, much, 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 much worse. And yet he is still in office. So just wild to think about. And I do think that everyone across the globe needs to watch All the President's Men. I can't emphasize this enough. This is a film that should have won Best Picture in 1976. It's fantastic. Please check this film out. It's a must watch. It is a very talky film, but I mean, there's so many long takes that are handled so elegantly. There's one long take that I think it's like 10 minutes long of Robert Redford on the phone, and you get to see him do his work. It's awesome. Like this is the stuff that I love. This and like Spotlight. This is why I did newspaper and journalism in high school. I mean, not high school, in early college. This is such a great film. Everyone, check it out. Also, we have a bunch of comments. So let me get to that. Second. Tears of Rain 11 says, yeah, True Stories is an amazing reminder of Coen Brothers and Jim Jarmusch's work. Yeah, honestly, now that you say it, I can see it in both, especially since True Stories has John Goodman, and John Goodman would be used a lot after this in Coen Brothers movies. And then Jim Jarmusch, I need to watch more of his movies. I really do, but this did kind of have Dead Man vibes where it's a very surreal and heightened film, which, speaking of which, I probably will be buying Dead Man on 4K in the July Criterion sale. So looking forward to rewatching that. Tears in Rain 11. Did you watch Father, Mother, Sister, Brother, the new Jarmusch film? I liked it a lot. I'm glad you liked it a lot, man. I have not. I have not seen it, unfortunately. It was one of those movies that was in theaters for like a week near me and then it just vanished, unfortunately. But I'm hoping to watch it soon. Because like I said, I do want to try to watch all of his movies because the ones that I've seen I've really liked. Andrew says, does YouTube allow Got Fingered to be said out loud? That is a question that we will find out after this video because if I can still be monetized for this video, I can, but if not, we'll see. I do want to do a review for that movie though, because not many people seem to talk about it, and it's an insane movie. Like, you will definitely be changed watching it, whether that's a good or bad thing. I can't really be the person to tell you. That's some high ratings for Freddy Got Fingered. I avoided the movie as I read Roger Ebert's review, but looks like it's time to watch it now. I would recommend watching it, but only if you were someone that loves like Tim Robinson, Nathan Fielder. This is definitely a movie that really influenced those two. Like I was talking to one of my friends after watching, I'm like, I could see Tim Robinson like doing a remake of this movie. I really could, because a lot of the situations have that that feeling that the show I think you should leave, because there's just so many sketches where it's like, okay, this is the part where the person should have left, but you know, it kept going. So I recommend it, but it's a wild film. Tim Robinson, Nathan Fielder, you're teasing me to watch it now. Yeah, man, I love both of them. I really do. Yeah, no, I did not like Beautiful Mind. Yeah, it's not for everyone, but I really liked it. Tears in the Rain, your watch is on 21st is wild. What a day you must have had. It was an amazing day, especially since half the movies I watched were in a sober state, and then the other half were in a heightened state. And arguably all of them were ones that I should have watched in the heightened state. But I'm responsible when it comes to the heightened state of mind with not driving, so had to make do. But rest assured, Father's Day will probably be in a heightened state. Andrew says, I saw All the President's Men once and was puzzled by it. Like, I didn't get what was going on most of the time, but the film is a masterclass in creating an atmosphere that I'm overdue for a rewatch. Oh, interesting. So maybe it's more so just because I'm American, so I was able to pick up right away where I'm like, oh, this is like the break in, and then it's like over the course of time, things were kind of getting pushed on the back burner where all this information was trying to get suppressed. So that way they could go on with life. And then the newspapers were like, well, there's more to this story. Let's try to tackle this. And it's about that journey of these two journalists and the newspaper as a whole and all that they have to do to, basically go to press. So it's very sad though, because the here and now, everything is all about getting it out as soon as possible, as opposed to, making sure everything is as accurate as possible. So I still do what I did though in college. I make sure to read at least 3 articles and then cross-reference the 3. Amazing cinematography as well. Yes. Oh, and on 4K, it looks phenomenal. The best it's ever looked. It's amazing with what that cinematographer was able to do, because if I'm not mistaken, it was the same cinematographer that did like Apocalypse Now and the Godfather films, and he did such a great job. Tears in the Rain says, I studied journalism in my undergrad, and this movie is basically the poster boy must watch. Yes. Honestly, I'm sure you can really appreciate it now then. If you haven't seen it, of course. It's on Mubi now. Well, I would highly recommend everyone check it out on Mubi then. Andrew says, oh, you were a journalism major, Tears in the Rain. I was in international relations and full sci-fi double major myself. Funny because Spielberg's the Post came out at the same time and I loved it. Same premise. And I'll say this, I would definitely recommend watching All the President's Men and then right after watch the Post, because you're getting 2 different perspectives, like 2 different newspapers. And I do think it's very fascinating. The Post is a good film. The Post is a good old-fashioned movie. Spielberg's version of All the President's Men. I, too, had international relations in my course. This is awesome. I'm very curious to hear both of your thoughts with all that's gone on with America yesterday to Iran, because that's waking up to that on my phone. I was like, all right, it's one of those days. Great. So I'm very curious to hear what folks overseas, which is thankfully most of my audience. I want to hear what you guys have to think about that. Alan J. Puckle will capture the 70s paranoia with his trilogy like no one else. Agreed. I love Parallax View in particular. I think that's such a great film. That was a film that I watched the first time, like super depressed, and I thought it was solid, but I knew with the ending that a rewatch was in order, so picked it up on Criterion Blu-ray, and when I was in a much better state of mind, and I liked it a lot more. So I agree. Cheers and Rain. This is my first live I've ever watched without exiting. I am having a great time. Did not expect. Looks like I'll tune in from now on. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate you saying that. I try to keep you guys engaged. It's a lot easier creating comments when it's just me with you guys, because when it's me and my two friends, it's a lot harder because I'm trying to balance the conversation I'm having with them, and then also talk about the movie, and then also talking with you guys in the comment section. So this is a lot more manageable for me. So I'm glad that you're having a great time, man. Andrew says, the last few days are basically Argo, but in reverse. No one is rooting for the American warmongers this time. I'm glad to hear that. And I also want to make it known that there are a lot of Americans, including myself, and especially myself, that are not happy with what's going on. It's diabolical. It's just honestly scary. And this is the second year. We're not even halfway done. And this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a dementia patient, and not like a high dementia patient like we had 4 years prior. This is one where it's like, yeah, I'm like always angry, and I'm always just gonna do whatever I'm thinking, like whatever's on my mind, and I'm just gonna post about anything. So people can say what they want about Biden. I wasn't a fan of him per se, but I'd much rather have that kind of dementia than what we're experiencing now with T Daddy Trump, as some people call him. So I agree. I'm not a fan of him. Really not a fan. Next up, the 23rd, I watched F1. This was with my wife because she hadn't seen the movie, and it got nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. So we decided to watch it together, and she liked it. Although she basically said it's like Rocky, except on wheels. And I'm like, yeah, I can see that. But I'm like, the filmmaking is really good in it. So it's ultimately what makes it stand out. It's incredible on 4K. That I gotta say right away. It's a great looking film, and it also sounds great. Best sound is pretty much in the bag in terms of the win for this film at the Oscars. So yeah, I like it. It's not a perfect movie, but I like it. Next up, I mentioned how the director that we were talking about earlier, I saw his first the film The Young Girls of Rochefort, which I think it was this day when I watched it, I realized that Letterboxd changed it from top 250 to top 500. And this is a movie that was in their top 250, and I liked it. I thought that overall it was solid, very well shot. Definitely recommend it. The next day in the morning, I watched Taylor Tomlinson, Prodigal Daughter. She is a comedian on Netflix, and one of the big things that she's focused on in the last 6 years is her like religious trauma, because she grew up in a very religious household, and as someone that grew up in a very religious household that has also had to deal with similar trauma from that, I immediately was someone that was encapsulated with her in 2020. I thought it was very fascinating to see that kind of focus in the comedy scene. So I've seen all of her specials, and this might be my favorite special from her. I do think that her comedic timing has gotten even better. I think the last 5 minutes in particular of the stand-up are hilarious. Just definitely a special that I was able to really relate to, especially, as I mentioned, as someone that similarly grew up in a religious cult. After that, later on that day, I watched The Age of Shadows, which is Kim Jong-un film, and I really like this film. I would highly recommend it. It's so good. Easily one of the best films from the director. It's an espionage thriller that keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's thought-provoking. It's very entertaining. Like, I still remember watching it, and just immediately I'm like, wow, like if this film is able to maintain this pacing, then I'm going to be in for quite a ride. And I was. So I would highly recommend The Age of Shadows. Next up, so full disclosure, The 24th, I was looking at my YouTube channel and I was like, okay, the next several months after 1989, there's going to be a focus on 1970s to 1979 Best Picture nominees. And the reason why I didn't start the 1960s was because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to watch all the nominees. But I decided on this day to actually do some research on if I could actually find all these movies at my local library and then possibly streaming. Sure enough, I was looking at it, and it's something that I do think that I can do. So on the 25th, I decided to start my journey of 1960 to 1969 Best Picture nominees, watching all of them, and in some cases, rewatching certain films. So I started with the Sundowners, and it's a movie that takes place in Australia, and I said it in my review, but it has such a like all shucks kind of quality to it. Like it's a movie that came out in 1960, but this feels like a movie that you would watch in the 1950s with like your nuclear family, and it's like, oh shucks, guys, we can make this work, and it's like it's following the American dream and everything, and it's a movie that there's very little conflict, and even if you look at it as like a slice of life type movie, it's not even fascinating on those fronts. So I say this sometimes, and I'm going to say it with this movie. Only watch The Sundowners if you are looking to watch all the Best Picture nominees from the 1960s. Other than that, you're best to avoid. Next up, I watched this was a film called Fanny, which was a 1961 Best Picture nominee, and a similar sentiment. It's a movie that honestly I can respect melodrama. I think melodramas, when done well, can be quite effective. This isn't one of them. The melodramatic elements are something that was like, what? Like, what are we doing here? It's not a good movie. I was very, very much so close to giving this a 2 out of 5. But then I was thinking about some of the filmmaking aspects, and I'm like, they're competent. So I'm going to give it a very, a very liberal rating of 2.5 out of 5. But it is a movie that I can see myself in a year or two from now looking at it and saying, why did I give this a 2.5 out of 5? Like, this should have been a 2, but I was in a good mood when I was watching it, so I was being nice to it. So, Fanny, 2.5 out of 5. Next up, I watched, later on that day, I watched Riverbend in theaters, which, if you're following me on Instagram, which if you haven't done so already, I would highly recommend you do so. I have that in my links down below. But one of my friends, whose name is Mike Dennis, would highly recommend you follow his channel as well. I've actually interviewed him on my channel on live stream format. And it was cool because when I interviewed him for this movie a year plus ago, he was currently working on the 6K restoration, and he showed me the rough draft, basically before the 6K restoration was done. So I got to see it, how it was in its original form per se, like before they, did the cleanup job, if you will. So watching it then and then watching it now was honestly like day and night. Like this was such a great restoration. I gave him huge props. I said to him, like, this movie looks so healthy. It's amazing. I am part of the crowdfunder for this movie. So I put aside, I think it was like $50 to get it, so that way it's going to be on physical media on Blu-ray. So I will be having a copy of that. But it was a great showing. There was a lot of people that were there, and it was just a great way to end Black History Month for myself, because as you saw, I unfortunately didn't really partake this month, so I'm glad that I was able to see this on the big screen. It's a good movie, and it's a movie that is more relevant now than ever, unfortunately. The 27th, I watched The Alamo. That's right, the 1960 movie that got nominated for Best Picture that I grew up with. It was one of, if not the first movies that I ever saw at my parents' house in 2004. And I've always liked this movie, but over the course of time, I've realized more and more that it's a very, very, very flawed movie. Even as a young teenager, I sold off my DVD. I realized that I wasn't a big fan of it, but I wanted to give it another chance, a decade plus later. And it's a very flawed movie. I would honestly say that if John Wayne stuck to directing and didn't act in this movie and had someone else do the role, which I know that he couldn't, because the only way he was able to get this movie made in the first place was if he had a big part. But if he had less of a part and they did a lot of cutting, I do think that there is a good movie in this. I think the cinematography is outstanding. I love the score. I love the costume design and production design. Even though I will say the costume design, I do wish that things were more like grimy because it does have like a clean feel to it. But the problem with this movie comes down to the length, the romance, and the fact that anytime John Wayne's on screen, he wrote and directed those scenes as if they're just a typical western that he does, and it's like, no, this is the Alamo. Like having a scene where you're stealing a bunch of cattle, it's very jarring compared to all the other elements. And I do think that there are a lot of scenes where they're trying to have comedic relief, and it just does not work, at least for me. So I gave it a soft recommendation, but just know that on March 6th, that's the 190th anniversary of the Alamo. And as of right now, I'm going to try to watch the remake, which is the one that I do prefer. And I do think the remake is, genuinely speaking, a good film. I know that not many people liked it when it first came out, but I'm a big defender of the remake. I think 2004 rendition is quite a good film. And if you're into history, especially, I'd recommend you check it out. Before I get into the last couple well, I shouldn't say couple, but bunch of movies that I watched, I have 7 comments, it looks like. So we have, let's see. Tears of Rain 11 says Father, Mother, Sister, Brother is streaming on Mubi now. All right, I need to check it out. What I need to do is I need to write down Jim Jarmusch to rank all of his movies, because once I go down the rabbit hole of all the movies of his that I need to watch, I then also check to see where I can watch his movies. So I need to do that for him. Tears of the Rain 11, F1 reminded me how Joseph Kosinski is channeling the Tony Scott. Like, I don't think we have a successor for Tony Scott. Not that, Joseph. Honestly, I'm with you, because I was telling my wife afterwards that it's very funny. I think, at least, or I should say ironic, maybe not funny, but it's very ironic because Joseph Kosinski did Top Gun Maverick, and then he did F1. And Tony Scott did the original Top Gun. And then in the 90s, he did Days of Thunder, which is a movie that's all about racing. So it's very interesting to see the trajectory that these two followed. And they also both have the whole Hans Zimmer element, because Hans Zimmer did the score for both F1 and Days of Thunder. So I do like F1 much better than Days of Thunder, although Days of Thunder does have quite a good score. Tears of Rain 11, Joseph Kosinski is on the same level as Scott, but he seems very classical and old-fashioned in his filmmaking in a good way. Yes, and I do think that his style, which is that of someone that was originally an architect, I think is very much so appealing, because, I mean, his movie Tron Legacy is what really got me into cinematography. So I do agree with that classical style, that it's very fascinating. Andrew, I personally like to see One Bite After Another win Best Sound, but I wouldn't be mad to see F1 get it instead. Pretty well deserved. For the record, if I had to choose, I would give One Bite After Another pretty much every Oscar, but I know that they're going to try to spread the love, so I could definitely see F1 getting Best Sound. I will say this, and I was talking to Marv off to the side, I think One Bite After Another is going to win Best Picture, and later on today we'll either 100% confirm it or make it to where it's like 90% confirmed, because the Screen Guild Award is later on today. And some people think that Sinners is going to win, which if it does, then I think One Bite After Another has a 90% chance. But if the Screen Guild Award goes to One Bite After Another, I think that One Bite After Another will 100% win, and I want it to win. Tears of Rain. I was on the should I not? Age of Shadows looks like I'll watch it now. Yeah, please do. I think it's really good. Tears of Rain 11. Is the Sundowners directed by Sidney Pollack? No, it's directed by, let me see real quick. I forget the director's name. Fran Zinnemann, who I've quickly realized that I'm not the biggest fan of this director. Like, I really liked High Noon, but From Here to Eternity, I really didn't like. Man for All Seasons, I really wasn't a big fan of. Let's see what else. The Sundowners, as I mentioned, I wasn't a big fan. Yeah, so I'm hoping that if I watch more of his movies, that maybe I'll like more of his movies. But yeah. Tears of the Rain 11. Have you seen the 2004 Alamo? Yes, I really like it. I do not own it on DVD, but that is only because I think that at some point it will get a Blu-ray release. release, in which case I will definitely be picking it up. But I do own it on digital. Andrew, I keep hearing it being used in politics and history, but what is the Alamo? I vaguely remember it's a Texas thing. Yes. So essentially, the Alamo, I'll try not to get too into it, but basically, they were trying to they're trying to get their freedom, and there was almost 200 people at the Alamo. And basically, they were in the middle of Santa Anna was trying to get past them to get to Sam Houston's army. So they were pivotal in trying to hold them out as long as possible, which ended up being 13 days. So they were able to keep, I think it was 7,000 soldiers at bay for nearly 13 days, which in turn gave Sam Houston time to grow an army. So the Alamo unfortunately fell, of course, but a lot of people look at it as, well, they fell and they brought about, unfortunately, death to them, but they were able to help out in the long grand scheme of things, Texas. So that's why it's a beloved element of Texas history. But I think that the Alamo, the original one, kind of misses the point, and how it's not like a, oh yeah, this is like a hoorah. It's very sad too, and I love how the Alamo, the 2004 rendition, really does get into that. How it's not a black and white type situation. There's a lot of gray into it. And I also love the rendition of Davy Crockett in the 2004 one, because I do think it's more in line with what someone that, is so beloved probably would have. Tears and Rain. Yeah, I agree. F1 is better than Days of Thunder, but I still have a soft spot for Days of Thunder as Tony Scott is one of my favorites. But the love story in that cheesy and corny. Yeah, man. I honestly, F1 and Top Gun Maverick both have similar elements in that I think the romance in both are just not needed and really bog both movies down. But yeah. You have to watch the Day of the Jackal. It's one of his best. You're right. I do need to watch it. Andrew, One After Another just won PGA though. Yes, and that's a really good precursor. That's why I'm saying, because it won PGA, because it won DGA, because it won Golden Globe, it's like 90% in the bag. But there is that 10% of, well, it could go to something like Sinners, because it has happened before. I mean, if we look at Parasite, I don't think it won Golden Globes. I don't think it won PGA. It might have won DGA, I forget, but we'll see. I mean, there is the whole preferential ballot voting type style, but I do think that One Battle After Another should win. Like, I like Sinners a lot, but give it to One Battle After Another. Andrew, looks like I'll check out Alamo 2004. Yeah, I would highly recommend it. I have my review on it on the channel as well. So yesterday was a very interesting day. I watched Valley of the Dolls, and Valley of the Dolls, I came across it. Ironically, I was looking something up on the library website, and I came across Valley of the Dolls, and I was like, oh yeah, Valley of the Dolls and Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, like two cult classic movies, especially in the LGBTQ plus circle. So I was like, all right, let me watch these movies. And I was reading up on how they're really campy and very surreal, and all these elements were saying to myself, you should probably watch it in a heightened state of mind. So I had in my mind that I was going to watch this and the sequel yesterday. And then that was pretty much 100% confirmed when the news broke with everything that's going on overseas. I was like, okay, yeah, I want to watch something that is kind of like making me, forget about all that. So I did watch Valley of the Dolls, and I enjoyed it. Did I understand what was happening? Most of it? No, I didn't. It's a very intriguing movie because it's played straight. It's very dramatic, but there's so many elements that feel so surreal and so what? What? But I would definitely recommend watching it, but I didn't love it per se, but it was a good one-time watch. Would I pick it up on Criterion Blu-ray? I don't think so. But I will say this, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, I watched the Criterion Blu-ray, and let me just put it to you this way. As I said, do not watch this movie sober. Do not. I don't think that you'll like it. But if you are someone that wants to watch a movie in a heightened state of mind, this is the movie to watch. This movie is utterly insane. It's taking all the elements of Valley of the Dolls and really bringing to light the campy and comedic elements that original should have had. But it's also a movie that works on its own. Like you don't have to watch Valley of the Dolls to appreciate this one, but it is a movie that it's very off kilter. Like the editing style is something that honestly I was like, I can't believe they're doing this. This is so fascinating. Like they would have it where you know how when someone's talking, a lot of times the camera will be focused on them. This movie doesn't really do that. What they'll do is when someone's talking, they'll have the camera focused on someone else. And then when someone is almost done talking, it then cuts back to the person. So then you're just focused on someone like as they're finishing their line, and then they're just staring. And it's like it gives a very like what is happening feel to it. And there's just so many insane scenes in this movie. Like for crying out loud, there's a scene of someone that wants to be called Supergirl, but is dressed up like in a medieval costume and then is chasing a Nazi. I'm like, what is happening? It's such a good experience though. Like I'm so glad I watched it. And I'm so glad one of my friends I reached out to him and he was like, "Yeah, dude, you got to watch it, but watch it in a certain mindset." I'm like, "Okay, okay." So I know I said I watched Valley of the Dolls and Beyond the Valley of the Dolls to get away from everything, but I realized after those two, I was like, I loved Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, but I want a giant middle finger to the Trump administration. And so I had three movies that actually I literally have in the review to grab a handful of movies about the unchecked power, Dark Knight, Oppenheimer, and Vice. And I had my wife choose for me which of the three to watch. And she blindly chose Oppenheimer. And I'm like, okay, a 3-hour movie. I'm down. And Oppenheimer's amazing. It's a fantastic film. It's the best film of 2023. It's one of Nolan's best. And it's terrifying. That ending hits home so hard. And I love how the focus on the bomb and how it's like, okay, once that's released to the world, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. It's the same thing that you can implement into really anything of technological advances. And that includes something like, say, AI. Like AI is a huge thing. Once that genie got taken out of the bottle, there's no going back. Companies, including the one I work for, are using it and implementing it. And it's wild, man. Like it's truly very fascinating with how Oppenheimer is a very classical approach to filmmaking, but it's also a film that it's very very timely. And yeah, I loved it, man. I love Oppenheimer. It's a film that it gets some slack from some people, but similar to like Social Network, JFK. If I'm in the mood for a movie that's very dialogue heavy but has such amazing pacing, I'll throw this bad boy on. Got a couple comments. Let's see. Second. Okay. Tears in the Rain. Roger Ebert wrote the screenplay for Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. Yes, I did hear about that. And honestly, makes me appreciate it all the more because he didn't like the MPA rating system. And so one of the big things that he decided to do was make it so that way it's a very heavy movie in regards to like having a lot of sex and nudity, which of course the MPA system was not happy about it. In fact, this movie, from what I understand, I think it got slapped with an X rating and now it's looked at as NC-17. But you watch it now and it's definitely like an R-rated movie because there are a lot of scenes with nudity and sex. But unless you're a prude, I don't think you'll mind watching that. Tears in the Rain. Well, all good things come to an end. It was great to sit through this. Got a few movie recommendations now we'll watch them. Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm glad that you tuned in. Hopefully, you'll tune in for the future as well. And I forget, are we following each other on Letterboxd? Because if not, I'll have to give you a follow. Oppenheimer is more JFK than Social Network for me. That's fair. I think for me, when I say the similarities between the two, I mean that Oppenheimer is going through many different courses of time and showing like the parallels and the juxtaposition of this person's life through these ripple effects of these time frames, and that happens in Oppenheimer and also happens in Social Network. And then JFK, I see the similarities in regards to how it's a very paranoia-driven film, but then also a film that is 3 hours long but does not feel like it in the slightest. And how it has so many different editing techniques that are brought together to create a heightened sense. Andrew, good opening to review, but you want to see Unchecked Power, watch Barbenheimer. complete form. Ryan Gosling has too much power, commanding Ken Hood for that in Barbie Land. Hey, that's a good point. I do like Barbie. I do. Tears of Rain 11 will be back for your next Letterboxd end of the month live. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Tears of Rain 11. He didn't review his own movie, but wrote about his experience writing it. You should read his write about it on his website. I should, because I have a great deal of respect for Roger Ebert, so I'm very, very curious to see that. Andrew says, "Have you heard of Heat 2 news?" I've never even seen Heat, and yet I'm still excited for a Legacy sequel, not even considering who's in it. I have. Christian Bale being in it is something that definitely excites me. I will say this. If you haven't seen Heat, bro, you need to watch Heat. Heat is amazing. It's a very influential film, especially with like Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy is heavily, heavily experienced. Like influenced, I should say. It's amazing. Like he is so good. And I mean, there's a reason why 31 years later it's still talked about. And like the town, Crime 101, I mentioned that movie. Crime 101 was heavily inspired by Heat. So yeah, I highly recommend you check it out, man. It's incredible. And I'm excited for Heat 2, but I'm also a little bit nervous because I'm wondering what they're gonna do. I like the idea of it being a prequel and a sequel, but I'm very curious because Michael Mann of recent hasn't really been a hit for me. So I'm hoping it's like the old Michael Mann directing, but we'll see. Man, you're missing a lot. Drop everything and watch Heat. What Tears in the Rain says, I would definitely recommend what he said. Heat 2 casting is goated, just like the first one with De Niro, Pacino, and how it's Bale and DiCaprio. Yeah, I think at the very least, I'll say this: the casting is amazing, so that does definitely give me hope. And truthfully, it probably will make my top 10 most anticipated of 2027 next year. So there's that. But all right, guys, I just wanted to say huge thank you to all of you guys that watched. I really appreciate you guys for watching. Stay tuned for my everything I watched in March of 2026. That will be coming out, of course, probably around this time next month. But I'll also say this: if you do want to, watch along, or not watch along, but keep track of what I'm watching, be sure to follow me on Letterboxd. I do have that on the link down below. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your Sunday. And yeah, I will catch you guys later.